Hey guys, well, today I'm back in Stormworks and I'm gonna have to do some major ranting. This is gonna be a rant video. I am playing, as you see, 146, although that is not terribly important. You could go back on all the way any version in the last 6 months, and all the ones that aren't completely broken basically do the same thing. Now, here on this test stand, I have a prototype for an engine that would be appropriate to drive a ship. The spec for this engine is 4,000 units of power output. And I have a dummy load over here, so once I get this running, I would set up a control system to see whether I can successfully power the dummy load. And the engine itself is controlled by my absolutely perfect AFR controller. It's the best AFR controller in the game because I made it and because it's perfect. It's without flaw and flawless, and i.e. perfect. So the engine, as you see here, so I got an engine, a 4-speed shift on the gearbox to so basically it has a light load so it can start, and then it ramps up from there to driving this up to about 60 RPS, which is as fast as you want to spin that thing. So, or basically, this is the most efficient setup I can come up with. Let's just start it and see what's going on here. Alright, we'll give it a little throttle. Did it catch? No, I didn't quite catch. Gotta wait until it catches. Okay, there you go. Alright, so the engine's caught, and I'm gonna ramp it all the way up to full throttle. Okay, full throttle. We are achieving our specified power output. And the engine will overheat. I know that. And I'm going to talk about the overheating issue in a few minutes, but alright, what's going on here? 17.7 revolutions per second. Alright, it's running for an engine this size. That's a very high RPM. I know that. So, alright. And as the engine is warming up, well, there are a couple of things going on here. Like for example, this cylinder is at 92.5%. Of course, the stoichiometric is 0.00 because the AFR controller is perfect. So, but you go down here, the efficiency is only 87.2, and again, stoichiometric is perfect. On this one, alright, same bank, next cylinder over, 89.3, 87.2, 89.3, 87.2. Same everything. I mean, they're cross-linked. They're sharing the. I mean, everything is exactly the same. All of them have independent. All of them have exhaust. I mean, the exhaust 100% on all of them. EFR is the same for everything. Stoichiometric is perfect. But there. 87.3, 92.5. Okay. What the hell? Alright. Again, the crankshaft. 17.36 feet. Alright, because it's losing, so it's going down as it gets hotter, it gets less efficient, so it's losing torque, so the RPS is going down. Alright, we know that. We don't care. Alright, now we go over here to the B side of the gearbox, and it's just under 10. The clutch, just under 10. So basically, what this is telling me is the clutch is slipping like mad, and it should be about as hot as it should be, white hot right now, because given how much power this thing's generating and how much that's apparently losing. So if it's losing, I put this into a calculator, and it's 42% of my RPS is gone there. So I'm losing 42% of my initial power, and so that thing should be white hot and flying apart from the heat and everything, but it's just sitting there losing me 42% of my power. Now, what I would prefer to do is just say, screw the clutch, let me just adapt this to that, and a 17 RPS equals 17 RPS, and that's how it should be, but it's not. I'm losing 42% of my RPS before I go over there. So what this means is the entire modular engines are dead. I can't use them. Absolutely. I mean, I've like a truck on my workshop. Okay, that's a little demo just showing I could make a truck with a modular engine, and I'm like, okay, well, this is nice, but I mean, beyond that, I mean, I just can't use these. It's garbage. This, that, to that, it's garbage. Can't use it. Unusable. It's just, I mean, it's just demo toy. Now, all right, let's pretend I had my 16 RPS all the way through here. The next problem is that this engine will eventually overheat. It will climb and climb and climb. I mean, the radiators are climbing in temperature. I mean, I've been messing around with the plumbing, but so I am getting flow through the radiators, and I am getting a temperature. I mean, but the temperature is not, the heat is not leaving the cylinder. Like, I got about a 50 degree difference between the cylinder and what I'm trying to cool it with. The ambient is like about 15 to 18. I don't know what ambient is. I think I should put a sensor here just to tell me what ambient is, but I mean, that's actually kind of important. But the bottom line is, the heat is not getting from the cylinders to the radiators, even though I've gone absolutely bonkers nuts trying to force coolant through these pipes, and it's just not working, and the temperature continues to rise. All right, so how would I solve that? All right, so 16, 17 RPS is too much for these cylinders. So what I'd have to do is, like, once the clutch is solved, I'd have to figure out, okay, what's my derating curve? I mean, there must be a curve where I would say, okay, well, it can only handle half of that, so I derate the engine by a 50%, and double the size out to 8 cylinders. So therefore, I could then run it at like half the RPS, and still turn my generator at 60 RPS, and that would be my solution. I mean, okay, I want to do that, but first thing first, I gotta get my 42% back, and once I get my 42% back, I know how much I really need to derate this engine, and then finally get a solution I could actually put in a ship or something. So that's basically my gripe about modular engines. Okay, in review, all right, the clutch that's issue 1A. Issue number 2 is that the heat is not reaching the radiator. Radiator could help me if only the heat could reach it. And I don't know. I mean, is this an intake temperature, an outlet temperature? Am I sending for the 42 Celsius back, or am I getting the 42 Celsius or the 24? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. And then I think that's about it. I think. So, all right, enough of this. All right, let's go to basic science here. This is the basic idea of a heat exchanger. we can pretend, we can call this A and call this B, and it doesn't really matter. We don't care. I know, it's like if you have a liquid cooling on your, a radiator is a heat exchanger, and you can buy heat exchangers online. Like if you had a building that had a chiller loop, okay, you get dirty water at 40 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to run it through. You want to cool a CPU, so you have an internal closed loop, and that has your CPU and a heat exchanger and a pump with high purity water. It won't clog up your stuff, and it'll work. And then you have your sort of your building loop or whatever. Like if you're in a lab, you can have a heat loop. So you use a heat exchanger to exchange the hot water from your CPU with the cold 40 degrees Fahrenheit water from your building, and you cool your computer that way. All right, so basically here, like you have like your hottest or it works either on the hot side or the cold side. Let's just keep it simple. Let's say we have hot water coming in here and lukewarm water going out there. So we want the hottest water to touch to transfer to the warmest water going out there, so we can still have the best possible transfer. And then the water will get cooler and cooler and cooler, and it's still fairly cool, and it's still somewhat warm down here, but again, we want it to touch the coldest water coming in here, or the coldest fluid. I don't care what the fluids are, and so it still transfers as much on the temperature as possible. Now, in reality, what you'd end up is with a stack of channels, and it would look like a pancake. Actually, you can buy these, and again, you want the direction of flow is that direction is downward on that side and upward on that side. So I know the flows are opposite of each other, and that's how you make an efficient heat exchanger. And it's very important that you understand this, because, all right, let's pull out a steam powered. Let's just start from scratch. Let's see, new. Okay, we want to make a steam powered thingy. Let's just make a build area here. Yeah, okay, just give us a huge amount of room. We trim it down later, do whatever. Okay, now the two interesting sources of fuel, well, there are three interesting sources of fuel. There's two interesting sources of fuel and one crazy source of fuel. Now, the interesting here is a coal firebox. Let's rotate it there. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, let's start with a basic coal firebox. The other interesting heat source would be a jet fuel. Union Pacific, for example, the steam locomotives have been converted to burning oil, basically, essentially jet fuel. And that's how they fire them these days, because the coal is really hard to handle, and it's just easier to have a jet fuel. It's just easier to work with. Kerosene oil, I mean, basically the same thing. So we don't have oil burners in this game, and I'm like, okay, well, and then the nuclear is not worth thinking about. I mean, we're just going to focus on the good old coal power here, because it's makes sense. All right, now how do we make this work? We can have a I guess we can start with a we'll start with a coal supply. Let's put that there. I think that's how it works. Let's look at the bottom of that. Yeah, I think that's how it works. So we need let's go over here. Let's see. Let's just throw one of these in the corner just to have it. Okay, this. Let's see, that's the intake. 2,000 plus hours into this game, and I'm still absolutely no good at the item rotation. Let's get an exhaust port. I wasn't lying when I said when I was no good at that. All right. Let's see. I think that's all we need there. All right. Let's see. We need a push button. Let's give ourselves a push button. Make ourselves a little workstation here. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see what else can. Because this is a laboratory, whenever you can put a meter, you put a meter. I know you use as many meters as possible, so. So we'll put. Okay, let's turn our little demo on. Alright, it's working. So we have our exhaust coming in, our air seems to be working. The fire is warming up. Coal is burning. And for this, we don't really care about that. All right, let's think about this in terms of thermodynamics. All right, we have a heat source here that's releasing heat that is above the ambient temperature. The ambient temperature, once again, is in the neighborhood of about 15 to 20, more or less. We don't care. So, and we have temperature that's much higher than much higher than even my gauge. I set my gauge up for, and we are burning through our coal pretty fast. So the heat from this fire is escaping through the metal box. The heat must be going through the all the stuff I attached to the box, probably burning that out, and the floor here. And it must be a lot of the heat must be going out the exhaust here. Now, consider if I took, instead of a valve here, let's say I put a turbo pump in there. What that would do is it would sort of supercharge the fire here, and it would burn at a higher rate and produce more heat, and much of which would leave this pipe here and be basically wasting it as exhaust at the moment. So, ideally, what I would want to do is capture this heat and try to put it to work for me. So, and look for my friend, look for my good old buddy, the heat exchanger. So, let's say we have a heat, and so the exhaust is effectively, it's sort of it's like a gas with particles of soot and stuff in it, but we'll call it a gas. And we want to heat on what's primarily water. So, and being a complete idiot, well, and i.e. smarter than the designers of the steam parts, and still a complete idiot, and we'll throw down the. That's the problem there. You don't know which. You can't tell which side is which, so you have to. All right. Try that again, and let's see. We'll of course, wrong button. Yeah, let's try that orientation this time. So, it'll take our superheated exhaust gases, push it through our gas to liquid heat exchanger, which is identical to a boiler in all respects except in this stupid game. And then we'll, of course, here's a cat crawling around my lap. But anyway, there. So, next thing we need to do is we'll build a frame here. It's not where it needs to be. And On this frame, we'll mount a nice big tank here. So we have our, make sure this is water now. Okay, we don't need to name that. We'll just paint it blue just so it's clear what it is. Paint. There. Okay, we know what that is now. Let's just see what's going on here. So, in theory, we can just take our take that there. Now, what happens in a piston or a turbine is that the high grade, that's high temperature, high pressure steam, that's high grade steam, gets pumped and is, because it's hot and high pressure, will force itself into anything it can get into. And so it'll, just because it's at high pressure, it'll force itself through the pipe into the turbine. Now, when the turbine creates mechanical power, it is also extracting on heat and pressure from the steam, and so when it comes out, it will be low grade, low pressure steam, or vapor, water, whatever it degrades to. So it'll be on a low pressure, low everything here. So what we're going to do is put that and we will simply dump that to outside. So the water will come in here, presumably. Well, conceivably, if this starts heating up, then it could blow back into the tank. So we need to rethink that. And what we're going to do, how we're going to solve that, is we're going to use a check valve, so that will force, and so the water can't feed back in, the steam can't go back up into the tank and explode it. It'll go, and so in theory, by gravity, it should just go straight down. Of course, what I'm doing here is building like an absolute idiot who thinks that the game has any semblance to physics. So yeah, the water. So we'll make sure the steam doesn't go back into the tank and explode it. Instead, we'll force it, and So in theory, in principle, the weight of the water will drive it into the boiler, and it can't go back, and instead will be driven out as steam, and which should, in theory, drive a turbine. We'll give ourselves some room here, and I think people like to use medium generators here with this. So I'll do that. Medium generator. Let's give it a realistic frame here. So I'll put some put some blocks under it here, just so it looks decent. So we want to collect the power. We'll just send the power back to where we started from, and we'll all right, there's no, let's see whether we have any logic coming out of here. All right, so temp. All right, so we can read some temperature out of here, so let's do that. Once again, I can't get that right. We'll see what that does, and of course, this is the entire point of this venture is to extract power. So that is actually what we really. That is our end goal here, so that we definitely keep track of that. There's no data exported from the turbine itself. So if this was real life, this would be a working system. So let's spawn it and see what happens. All right. Light our fire. So the that goes in there. So the all right. So now, in theory, according to that dial, we should be getting steam. And from this setup, I mean that temperature should be producing steam, but we get there's no steam there. I mean, that's what the hell is I now it's not even making any sense. I mean, has it burst, or is it maybe I got my ports wrong. All right, let's assume that I have my ports backward. All right, let's look at all right, what port is this? This is fluid out. Now what I showed you earlier with my heat exchanger. So if this is fluid in, then this should be my fluid out, and that should be my all right, this is A in, A out, then that should be B out and B in over there. So that's backwards of what a heat exchanger should be. That's a problem. And we saw that it reached the boiling temperature in theory. I mean, the boiling point of water is affected by the pressure. So when you say water boils at 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit, the hidden variable there is the pressure. Now at the sea level, at 14.7 pounds per square inch, or whatever that is in Pascal or whatever, and that is Cat, you're too heavy. All right, Cat is gone. The whatever that is, so at sea level, it's that, and if it's up on a mountain, it's considerably less. Might be 200 instead of 212, or on 90 instead of 100, and that's well-known science. Or if it's at much higher pressure, it'll have to get much hotter to achieve steam at that pressure. Like Jay Leno, and he likes his old steam cars, and his cars operate, and he has them set up. I don't know whether it's Fahrenheit or Celsius. Let's say it's Fahrenheit. So he has his cars cook their boilers to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and that produces the amount of pressure that he wants to use for his engines, and that's sort of a happy medium between efficiency and not rupturing the boiler. So that's how he runs his cars. So he has a regulator that holds the fire or the boiler temperature at 800 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe, and that's how they work. So right here we found that even though we can achieve a rise in temperature above 100 degrees Celsius, we cannot actually boil the water. I mean, so even though there's water, even though we have, let's try that again. I mean, I think that's what I forgot to do is still diesel. Let's fresh water and spawn that again. All right, we've double checked. It's fresh water. Even though the ports are backwards from what they should be, it's still transferring the heat from the box through the exhaust and plume to the thing here, and we now have fresh water coming in here, and the temperature rises. I don't know why they. So we'll wait until our temperature's all the way up. We have no flow there, no steam there. Should have rescaled those dials, but anyway. And that's a weird result. That is a very surprising result there. So I am transferring heat, but I can't seem to. So whatever fluid is in there is so effective as a. No, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, this device would necessarily be heated up by the box there, and it must release that heat. So there must be. So either it's then reached an equilibrium point with the exhaust, or it must be releasing, or there must be a positive fluid flow through the loop there to the out, and it's so. There you are. So that all right. Now what I had been ignoring are these stupid cooling points down there. Makes utterly no sense. No. Let's say the firebox itself was the heater. Let's try to use the firebox itself as the boiler. All right. So we'll instead of trying to exchange the heat, we'll take the heat and immediately dump it. So we'll, yeah, gotta get my. Well, all right. So we'll immediately dump the fire there right next to the coal box, so it too catches fire, and there's a glorious explosion. But well, let's not think about that too hard, and we'll instead build pipe over here. Let's send it up here. And finally, put elbows. The theory behind this change is that if the firebox has a liquid loop through it, then therefore it is already a boiler, and therefore I should be able to directly extract the steam from that loop and send it directly to my turbine. Job done. Let's see, these, removed that already, and then I have no, temperature in the firebox is already 102 plus, 140, 150, and we're getting no flow through there. All right, I'm not going to give up. All right, so that didn't work, so what we're going to do is we're going to get medieval on this bastard. We're going to go in, patch this straight, remove this section here, and come on, I could move my pivot point over here there. All right, now what we're going to do is going to use a all right, now I think in real life they use a Bernoulli pump to flood a boiler. So basically we're going to so once the firebox reaches temperature, we're going to just start flooding it and just forcing cold water into that, where it will expand, where it should theoretically be turned into steam, because that's the coolant loop, and it is on it is therefore itself a boiler, and the steam will go out that pipe, produce hopefully more power than we are using to flood it, and thus have an efficient engine. Let's try this. All right, we saw the pump kick over once. That's interesting. So so the pump is on. It has a ample supply of water still, but it is not it is not quote unquote coolant. So it must have a check in there saying, okay, I'm being flooded with water. The player's being intelligent, so therefore I'm going to force him to be stupid by locking that off, and thus we get no power, even though that makes absolutely perfect sense. So I don't know. Very, very stupid piece of hardware there. Let's see if I have a... This is a lab I made a long time ago. I have not loaded it recently. It's roughly the same configuration. Let's see if I can figure out... So basically, I have the steam boiler in effect. I have all these valves here to try to, in a desperate attempt to prevent that from blowing up. And then that goes in through there, out through there. Then I have various gearboxes trying to extract useful power there. So this is a feed-through system. So the massive water tank just gets heated up to a high-grade steam, which should drive the boiler, and then it is released to ambient, so pressure in this pipe should always be 0. So that's how that works. Also, I have this system where I can... I have this system, so how do I control it? Well, I have a coal supply up there, and then I can very, very carefully throttle in exactly how much coal I want. So I just flood this son of a bitch, and I get that going. I'll be right back and take a little break while it's warming up. Alright, let's see. Are we producing any power yet? Alright. Steam. Lots of steam. Uh-oh, the pressure dumps are going at full blast. And it's right at the bursting point. Boom! Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So even though I did everything I could to dump the excess pressure, all right, the one. All right, let's look at this again. All right, one thing I had not done to this, and I guess I should have, but is the let's see. Should have put a T in here. Pressure sensor. All right, now we are going to measure the pressure coming out of the boiler. And for good measure, we need to, well, we'll look at the pressure over there later. But let's save that little update. Now you have to cool the thing. Yeah, what's this? All right. Even if the pipe spawned at high vacuum, the pressure in the pipe should be like negative 14 pounds per square inch, or if it's using atmospheres, then it should be negative 1 atmosphere. I mean, this being I don't know, is this a gauge pressure, a meter pressure? All right, let's assume it's a gauge pressure. So the gauge pressure would be negative 1 atmosphere, and it cannot be lower than negative 1 atmosphere because that's how physics works. You can't have a truly negative pressure. You can only have a pressure that's less than what you have. So, all right, the boiler is at temperature. Now the pressure here. Well, let's see. Are we? Yeah, we are producing power. I mean, I'll give it that. I mean, I don't know what the ratio is here. So we got 6 RPS to 9 RPS. So that's about 1.5 to 1. So that it's not a very not much power. And we are releasing a little bit of fluid. So I guess when it reaches when that in the so we have 9.8, 9.9, 9.7. So we're at the bursting point in the boiler, yet the output is why. All right, so this variable and that variable are obviously very different. So this variable is much lower, so the pressure is reading there was much lower than that pressure. Now part of the reason was because I was desperately trying to bleed pressure off of there. However, if this was still at the bursting point, then either there's a valve that's internal to the boiler. Well, I can't see it now, but either there was a valve internal to the boiler which was choking that pressure out. Still doesn't make any sense. I mean, I mean, it was so either the only yeah, that's the only explanation, is that there's a valve internal to the boiler that was preventing the pressure from reaching the pipe, where it would be shot out by my pressure relief valves. And so basically, this is worthless junk. Now, all right, let's pretend I solved that. Let's pretend any of that worked, and let's go over here. Okay. Let's pull out the train I was working on yesterday. Let's just pretend this thing works. Now, I mean, the pressure relief valves, those are the pressure relief valves there. In addition, I have a second pressure relief system here that actually uses a large pump. So when the valves release, it still explodes. So what I ended up having to do is use a large fluid pump to just force everything out of that line and just dump it with the largest port I could find, to just dump it as violently as possible. And that's the only reason this thing doesn't blow up, which means it's an absolute piece of crap. Now there is a condenser in here. The condenser variables are here. The volume in the condenser and the temperature in the condenser. Of course, it's ambient right now, so it's about 19.5 must be the ambient temperature. So we'll light it up. We have a control for the fire, the boiler pressure, the amount of water in the boiler. Now there is I have a pump in there that whenever the boiler volume drops below 150, it'll hold it at 1. So it's basically under regulation, and the value of regulation is 150. We have no pressure yet, and they're not moving. That I can manually run the pump, the fill pump, and I can manually fire that. I can manually fire the exhaust pump off the side there. Now here again I have pressure sensors. That is the hot high grade steam, and as you can see, it has an enormously negative pressure there. Also has an enormously negative pressure on the cold side, or the low grade steam side of the turbines. There are 3 turbines in there. There's one for each set of wheels. One, 2 for each set of wheels. Not the tender has no power, and then then another turbine which fires the electrical system that keeps the pumps and everything else running. So so those are the 3 turbines. So we now suddenly have pressure. Pressure is building. Now we still have negative pressure on the cold pipe. The hot pressure is suddenly positive. So right now I have total pressure is 1,000. Now watch what 1,000 pressures do. I mean, look at this. We could just, with those 1,000 pressures, we could just fly. I mean, there's nothing holding this thing back right now. Now the boiler is already up at the pressure limit, and it's already starting to dump out the side there. But since the low side, all right, so we're down to the hot pressure is low because we're dumping it. The cold pressure is -14 because I actually have a second pump, an electrical pump that's pumping on whatever the hell is in the cold the pipe into the condenser. It's not showing up at the condenser. The condenser is 96 centigrade, and it's bouncing all over the place, which makes. I mean, we're going 100 and we're losing speed here, but we're not. But since we're pumping it over the side, let's just stop this thing and just look at the goddamn condenser. All right, I still have. That's going crazy. What I have under here is I have the condenser in there. I can't really see it from here, and it's the blue thing. All right, the steam condenser. The temperature is still hot. The coolant is going crazy. I have just another regular pump. I have 2 heat sinks down here. So so as the train is going to like 160 kilometers per hour, the air should be roaring past there. So I have these heat sinks down in that slipstream, and the heat sinks should be the flow through there. So I have a good amount of fluid. I have a reservoir of 140, 150 in each of these heat sinks, and a very good flow through here. But so even with all that reservoir and with all that flow, it's still bouncing like crazy. So when it's kind of settled down there because I've stopped it. But let's just take off the brakes and just take off again. So I start putting stress on the system. So even with all that reservoir and with all that flow through it, the temperature should be stable and it should be fairly cool, but it's not. So it must be being... I don't really know what the flow is through the system right now. The turbine available pressure, I mean, of course I'm continuously having to force dump the steam from the hot side just to keep the damn boiler from blowing up, so all right. So again, the pressure in the boiler is 9.5, 9.6, right at the bursting point, but the pressure in the hot pipe is fractional because I'm dumping it like crazy just to keep the boiler from blowing up. And why is this and that a separate variable? They should be the same goddamn number. There should be one number. If that's 9.5, then that should be 9.5. If that's 4.3, that should be 4.3. And it should be the same number. I mean, let's look at my firebox. My firebox is getting low. I mean, it's be Mr. Fireman here. I mean, a fireman on a train is a guy who tends the fire, and it's the downside of being a steam engineer. That's why you want to burn jet fuel in this thing instead of coal. You just you treat it almost like a diesel at that point. I'm not even going to get into piston engines versus turbine engines. I mean, that's sort of I see that as a moot point at this juncture because as I've illustrated here, the system is broken enough that it doesn't matter. It just... Alright, so we have the firebox is full again. I mean, that's basically doing the same thing it was. My total turbine available power is only, I mean, as you can see, it's completely unstable, but it's, let's call that 8.0. And so that's all the pressure I can manage there. I am using a pump to pump from the cold side into the condenser, and which is stupid because the condenser should be cold enough that it effectively draws the low grade steam into it just by the virtue of being colder, but it doesn't. I'm having to force it in there, and at the same time I got so much excessive pressure on my boiler that I'm having to basically break my balls here, getting all that pressure out of there before I can use it, just to prevent it from blowing up, which is, it's just start. All right, let's do the thing. Let's throttle the fire back to 58 or 60 there. All right, now the fire should then start cooling off now because it's because I've taken away most of its air. So what does that do for our pressure? Now the pressure, and because the fire is lower, the temperature should be going. Temperature doesn't make any sense. Sorry, the temperature there is 227, and because we have to use that stupid coolant line out of the firebox into the separate boiler. We're losing about 50 degrees Celsius of temperature through that stupid cooling loop, and then so we're taking that and this bonkers nuts pressure situation, and I mean, because we're pumping negative pressure out of the cold pipe, we can maintain our total turbine pressure, and the train can maintain speed. But this is just, you know what? I'm gonna have to wait until this crap is patched. I mean, what I was thinking of doing is making a controller for all this to keep all this running, and then provide good diagnostic information to the player. But I'm not going to be able to do that until this garbage is cleaned up, and there's just too much bonkers nuts going on here for me to say this, to make a working train here. So I mean, this looks acceptable. I mean, like here we are, we're moving along, and but really it's not. It's not. I mean, for this to be, it doesn't just need to move. It actually has to make sense. I mean, there have to be numbers here which make sense, and there isn't. And it has to be a way to make and to have a working system here, and there just isn't. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I mean, I'm gonna just make a video about how screwed up this is, and publish that instead of a controller set, and that's how it's gonna have to be for now. Well, thanks for watching, and let's see if I can